There is a truth about men that very few women fully understand. A truth that feels cold, unfair, and even uncomfortable. Yet it explains almost every pattern you've faced in love. Men do not respect the woman who argues, begs, pleads, or tries to convince him to stay. They do not respect the woman who makes threats, who cries to keep the relationship alive, or who tries to force him to value her. These actions may come from pain, from fear, or from emotional exhaustion, but they never activate respect in a man. What does activate respect is something far more powerful, far more silent, far more emotionally grounded. The woman who can walk away peacefully. A woman who can leave with dignity, calmness, and emotional self-control sends a signal that hits a man deeper than any speech, any argument, or any desperate attempt to be understood. It tells him that she refuses to negotiate her value. It tells him that she understands her worth without needing validation. It tells him that she's not afraid of losing him because she refuses to lose herself. And men feel this, not on the surface, but in the deepest psychological parts of their masculinity. A man may not admit it, but he knows the difference between a woman who leaves because she wants attention and a woman who leaves because she has standards. The first one triggers irritation. The second one triggers respect. When a woman walks away peacefully, without anger, without chaos, without trying to make him feel guilty, she forces him to confront something incredibly rare: her emotional independence. And here's the cold truth. Men fear losing a woman who is not afraid of losing them. Men value the woman who values herself. Men chase the woman who refuses to chase them. Men rethink everything when a woman leaves without destroying the room on her way out. It's not because leaving magically changes him. It's because your calm detachment reveals something he couldn't see while you were still trying to fix things. The difference between love that is chosen versus love that is depended on. A peaceful exit shows him that you are not attached to his potential, his behavior, or his promises. You are attached to your peace. And when a woman protects her peace, a man sees her differently. Her silence becomes her power. Her stillness becomes her message. Her absence becomes her mirror, reflecting everything he took for granted. The truth is simple. A man cannot respect a woman he can emotionally control. A man cannot value a woman who fears walking away. A man cannot grow with a woman who sacrifices herself to save the relationship. But he will respect the woman who holds her boundaries, who refuses to argue for her worth, and who walks away with grace when she is no longer honored. Today, you're going to learn why this kind of woman becomes unforgettable, why she becomes the one he rethinks, regrets losing, and eventually chases, and why peaceful detachment is the strongest form of feminine power a woman can ever carry. Let's dive in. Section number 1. The power of peaceful detachment. The first truth a woman must understand is that peaceful detachment equals psychological impact. It is the moment when your energy shifts from trying to fix him, save him, explain yourself to him, or convince him to see your worth, to quietly choosing yourself instead. This shift hits a man in a way nothing else does. Men are conditioned from a young age to respond more strongly to absence than to presence, more strongly to silence than to words, and more strongly to loss of access than to emotional pleas. It isn't because men are cruel or heartless. It is because of how their psychology is structured. A man does not process emotion in the heat of the moment. He processes it in the quiet aftermath. He does not understand the value of your presence when you're fighting to remain close. He understands it when that presence is no longer guaranteed. When you stop arguing, stop explaining, stop raising your voice, stop chasing clarity, and stop trying to prove anything, something shifts inside him. Your peaceful disengagement disrupts the emotional dynamic he was accustomed to. Suddenly, he is faced with a version of you he did not expect, a woman he cannot provoke, cannot destabilize, and cannot pull into chaos. Men are used to women reacting emotionally. They are not used to women responding with stillness, calmness, and quiet strength. This is why peaceful detachment is so powerful. You take away the emotional battlefield he unconsciously relied on to maintain control. You remove the drama that allowed him to avoid accountability. You remove the arguments that let him rewrite the story. You remove the emotion that made him overlook the consequences. A man cannot reflect when you're emotionally chasing him, but he reflects deeply when you release him with peace. This is the moment where his brain begins to replay everything. Your loyalty, your patience, your effort, your intentions, your presence. He begins to feel the weight of what he wasn't giving. He realizes what he took for granted. And the shocking part is this: he doesn't feel it because you punished him. He feels it because you stopped participating in the emotional cycle altogether. Peaceful detachment communicates a message louder than any argument ever could. I choose my peace over your patterns. You are not leaving to teach him a lesson. You are not leaving to manipulate him. You are not leaving to create fear. You are leaving because your soul has outgrown the instability, and men respect this. They may not respect the woman who begs for change, but they respect the woman who becomes the change by refusing to stand where she no longer feels valued. Peaceful detachment forces him to confront the truth of the dynamic without the noise, a truth he was never willing to face while he still had emotional access to you. When you no longer fight for him, you activate something profound. He must now fight with himself, his ego, his behavior, his choices, and decide whether he is willing to rise to the level of the woman who walked away with grace. Section number 2. The boundary of silence. One of the most powerful forces a woman can ever use in a relationship with a man is not anger, not confrontation, not emotional intensity, but silence. Not the passive-aggressive kind, not the "I'm going to punish you" kind, but the calm, self-respecting silence of a woman who has finally chosen her emotional peace over the endless cycles of arguing, repeating herself, or begging to be understood. This silence is not emptiness. It is a message men hear with terrifying clarity. When a woman goes silent, men feel it in a way they cannot ignore. Words allow him to deflect, debate, and delay responsibility. But silence strips him of all his defenses. It forces him to sit with himself. It forces him to replay everything he said, everything he did, everything he overlooked. Silence becomes the mirror he cannot escape, reflecting his behavior back at him without distortion. And for the first time, he becomes aware of the consequences he thought would never arrive. Men don't fear losing a woman who is loud, emotional, and reactive. They fear losing the woman who becomes quiet. Because that quietness is not weakness. It is decision. It is clarity. It is the end of negotiation. It is the beginning of accountability. When your words stop flowing toward him, he must confront the reality that he no longer has access to a part of you he was using to soothe his ego, validate his choices, or ignore his responsibilities. A woman's silence is the boundary that forces a man into introspection. He begins to ask himself questions he never asked while you were pleading. Why did she stop trying? Why did she stop explaining? Why did she stop reaching out? What did I do? What didn't I give? What did I miss? Silence doesn't just create distance. It creates awareness. And awareness is the beginning of respect. Because men do not respect chaos. They respect consequences. and silence is consequence without cruelty. Your silence tells him something words never could. You are done being the emotional caretaker of his immaturity. When you stop chasing emotional closeness, he must create it. When you stop initiating conversations, he must step forward if he values you. When you stop rescuing the relationship, he must decide whether he is willing to repair it. And the moment you stop filling the space, he must fill it or lose you. Another truth about silence is that it breaks patterns. Men get comfortable when a woman is predictable. They expect the same reactions, the same arguments, the same attempts to reconcile. But when your silence replaces your usual emotional responses, you disrupt the pattern he relied on to stay the same. Suddenly, you are not part of the cycle. You are not emotionally available on demand. You are not trying to manage his feelings anymore. That shift shakes him, because it shows him he has run out of time to take you for granted. A woman's silence is not the absence of love. It is the presence of self-respect. And when that silence enters the space between you, a man will either rise to meet your value, or he will lose the kind of woman he never thought would walk away so gracefully. Section number 3. The strength of non-reactivity. One of the most misunderstood but transformative boundaries a woman can embody is the boundary of non-reactivity. The ability to stay emotionally steady, calm, and centered even when a man becomes distant, inconsistent, or emotionally chaotic. Men do not respect emotional explosions, dramatic confrontations, or panic-driven responses. What they respect is composure. What they notice is self-control. What they rethink is the woman who remains grounded even in moments that used to shake her. Non-reactivity doesn't mean you don't feel. It doesn't mean you suppress your emotions. It means you refuse to let his behavior drag you into the emotional storms he creates. Men often test boundaries unconsciously. They pull back to see how much control they still have. They go silent to see how deeply you need them. They shift their tone to see if you'll absorb their mood. They create uncertainty to see if you'll chase stability. When you react emotionally, when you panic, argue, demand answers, or plead for reassurance, you reinforce his belief that he can destabilize you without consequences. But when you respond with calm strength, when his inconsistency is met with your clarity, when his silence is met with your composure, when his unpredictability is met with your emotional neutrality, the entire dynamic changes. Because now he sees something he wasn't prepared for, a woman he cannot manipulate emotionally. This is where respect begins. Men do not respect the woman whose emotions they can control. They respect the woman whose emotional center remains intact even when they waver. Non-reactivity forces a man to face himself. He can no longer hide behind your reactions. He can no longer use your emotional intensity as a distraction from his own behavior. He can no longer shift the blame onto your tone or your response. Your calmness turns the spotlight back on him, and without the emotional noise, he is forced to confront the truth. His actions don't align with the man he claims to be. When you refuse to respond impulsively, he begins to notice the difference between your previous version and the woman you're becoming. Before, he may have felt superior because he could predict how you would react. Now, he feels unsettled because your stability exposes his instability. Before, he may have felt comfortable because he thought you needed him. Now, he realizes that you choose peace over emotional chaos. This boundary also protects your dignity. When you no longer argue over the same issues, beg for the same reassurance, or fight for clarity that never arrives, you preserve your emotional energy. You stop giving him the validation of knowing he can influence your mood. You stop rewarding inconsistency with attention. You stop feeding his ego by trying to decode his behavior. Your neutral response creates distance, not out of punishment, but out of self-preservation. And here's the deeper psychological layer. Men equate emotional reactivity with emotional dependence, but they equate emotional neutrality with emotional strength. When you respond calmly, you teach him that your emotional world is not a playground for his inconsistency. When you remain grounded, you show him that your stability is self-sourced. When you stop reacting, he starts noticing everything. The tone he used, the words he chose, the silence he created, the distance he caused. A man will only reflect when the emotional noise stops, and your non-reactivity becomes the quiet truth he cannot escape. Section number 4, the boundary of self-possession. One of the deepest boundaries a woman can ever embody, and the one that hits a man with the greatest emotional force, is self-possession. This means you do not collapse into him. You do not center your entire emotional world around him. You do not make him the axis your self-worth rotates on. Instead, you hold yourself firmly, gracefully, and completely. You choose yourself even when it's difficult, even when your heart is invested, even when you wish he would step up. This kind of self-possession is not arrogance. It is emotional adulthood. It is the highest form of feminine strength a man ever encounters. Most men do not consciously try to take advantage of a woman's softness, but they unconsciously adapt to what she allows. When she gives too much, he gives less. When she overextends, he relaxes. When she carries the emotional weight of the relationship, he lets her. When she keeps proving herself, he stops trying. And this isn't because he is bad. It's because human nature always gravitates toward comfort and ease. A woman without boundaries unintentionally trains a man to treat her casually. But a woman who possesses herself, her mind, her emotions, her standards, her identity, sends a completely different signal. She does not overinvest in a man who underinvests in her. She does not abandon her friends, her passions, or her routines just to stay close to him. She does not shrink her voice to keep the peace. She does not sacrifice her dignity to maintain the connection. She does not silence her intuition because she fears losing him. Instead, she stays rooted in who she is. She remains whole even when she loves. She remains grounded even when she desires. She remains centered even when she hopes. This boundary forces a man to show up differently. When he realizes he cannot absorb her self-worth, cannot manipulate her emotions, cannot rely on her to fix the relationship for him, he becomes aware of his own role. He sees the difference between a woman who is dependent on him and a woman who walks beside him. The dependent woman becomes invisible to him, predictable, reactive, easily controlled. But the self-possessed woman becomes unforgettable, because her strength exposes his potential and his shortcomings at the same time. Self-possession is the boundary that shows him you are not waiting for him to define you. You define yourself. You are not waiting for him to choose you. You choose yourself. You are not waiting for him to validate you. Your value is already internal. This energy shifts the entire dynamic. Suddenly he sees you with new eyes. He recognizes the rarity of a woman who loves without losing herself, who cares without collapsing, who desires without depending, who connects without compromising her identity. And here's the cold truth. Men only respect what they cannot dominate, not physically, emotionally, not through control, through influence. A self-possessed woman is emotionally unshakable. She can love a man deeply, but she will not drown in him. She can build with him, but she will not bend her boundaries to be chosen. She can invest, but she will not over-deliver. And when she decides to walk away, she does so peacefully. because she does not need chaos to prove her value. Her presence has already proven enough. This kind of woman doesn't just make a man rethink. She makes him transform, because he realizes that losing her doesn't just mean losing love. It means losing the woman who made him want to become a better man. Section number 5. The calm exit. There is nothing more psychologically impactful to a man than a woman who leaves without punishment, without theatrics, without screaming matches, and without emotional explosions. Most women leave in pain, anger, or desperation. And while those reactions are completely understandable, they create noise that allows the man to deflect responsibility. He gets to focus on her reaction instead of his behavior. He gets to blame the breakup on her overreacting instead of on his neglect. He gets to protect his ego by rewriting the story. She's emotional. She's dramatic. She's impossible. That noise shields him from the truth. But when a woman exits calmly, something entirely different happens. There is no noise to hide behind, no drama to blame, no outburst to invalidate, no emotional intensity to use as a distraction. Instead, he is forced to face the raw, unfiltered reality of the situation. She didn't leave to hurt me. She left because she finally chose herself. A calm exit is a psychological earthquake for a man. It disrupts the narrative he built to protect his ego. It exposes the reality he avoided. It confronts him with the exact truth he tried to escape, that she is no longer willing to participate in a dynamic that drains her. And because she walks away with grace, he cannot turn her into the villain. He cannot flip the story. He cannot rewrite the ending. He must sit with the truth exactly as it is. This is why a peaceful exit hits men so hard. It reveals maturity. It reveals strength. It reveals self-respect. It reveals that she is not trying to change him anymore. She is simply done. When a woman leaves without trying to provoke guilt, she forces a man to feel his own. When she leaves without trying to inspire regret, she forces him to face his own emptiness. When she leaves without trying to get a reaction, she forces him to confront the reality of her absence. And that absence, when paired with her calmness, becomes louder than any words she could have spoken. Men feel the weight of what they lost only when they can no longer blame anyone else. A peaceful exit creates that exact emotional environment. It is clean, it is quiet, it is undeniable. It shows him that she is not shocked by his behavior. She expected more, but settled for less for too long. It shows him that she is not leaving for someone else. She is leaving for herself. It shows him that she is not walking away in anger. She is walking away in clarity. A calm exit also leaves a powerful imprint on his memory. He may forget the arguments, but he will never forget the dignity. He may forget the details, but he will never forget the stillness. He may forget the conversations, but he will never forget the version of her that walked away without bitterness. Because that version reveals something men rarely see. A woman who finally recognized her worth without needing him to acknowledge it. And here's the real cold truth. Men don't regret losing the woman who screamed at the end. Men regret losing the woman who walked away quietly, because her silence means she's not coming back. A calm exit is not weakness. It is closure. It is not a threat. It is a decision. It is not the end of love. It is the beginning of self-respect. Shortly. The truth you've learned through this entire video is not just a dating principle. It is a life principle. A woman's greatest power is not in her ability to argue, convince, plead, or force a man to see her worth. Her greatest power lies in her ability to walk away with emotional peace, calmness, and dignity. That exit, silent, grounded, self-possessed, becomes the moment that changes everything. Men do not respect what they can predict. They do not value what chases them. They do not fear losing what clings to them. But they respect deeply, almost painfully, the woman who withdraws with grace when the relationship has reached a point where her self-worth is being compromised. The calm exit is not just a boundary, it is a declaration of identity. It says, I refuse to stay where my heart is undervalued. It says, I will not negotiate with inconsistency. It says, my peace matters more than your emotional comfort. And the moment a woman stands inside this truth, she shifts from being a dependent participant in his story to being the author of her own. That shift is something a man feels immediately, not because she punishes him, but because she honors herself. And self-honoring energy is the rarest and most magnetic form of feminine power a man ever encounters. This is why the woman who can leave peacefully becomes unforgettable. She represents a level of emotional maturity that forces a man to reflect, to confront himself, to see the difference between treatment he can get away with and treatment he will lose a valuable woman over. The peaceful departure removes the noise and exposes reality. He can no longer blame her reaction. He can no longer hide behind her emotions. He can no longer escape the consequences of his behavior. Instead, he is left with the silence she leaves behind. And that silence becomes his teacher. The feminine power you hold is not about being harsh or cold. It is about being whole. It is about valuing your standards more than your fears. It is about refusing to shrink yourself for someone who refuses to rise. It is about understanding that leaving is not failure. Staying in the wrong place is. When you walk away peacefully, you are not breaking the bond. You are breaking the cycle. You are not giving up on love. You are giving up on patterns that dishonor you. And this is where true transformation begins. Men don't forget the woman who walked away quietly, because that woman becomes the unfinished story in his life. The what if, the I should have treated her better, the I didn't realize her value until she was gone. And while he sits with those thoughts, you move forward into a life where your heart is protected, your peace is prioritized, and your worth is honored. That is the destiny of a woman who walks away without chaos. So remember this, you don't earn a man's respect by fighting for him. You earn it by respecting yourself enough to walk away from him. Your silence becomes your strength. Your dignity becomes your message. Your peaceful exit becomes your legacy. Because the woman who walks away peacefully doesn't lose. She becomes the woman every man wishes he had valued while he still had the chance.